Welcome back to Inglorious Banters. This is episode 9. We've got a bolt action focus, and this episode is called Once More Into the Breach, because we have been far away from our breaches, and now we have returned to the front line to actually do some hobby and get back onto the actual microphones.
Yeah, fresh breaches and all.
Exactly.
Oh no, my breeches.
Yeah, I'm sure that there were lots of stories of storming the French breaches at Normandy. Anyway, the point is we're back. It's been a while. We've had loads of different stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch is going to give us a brief synopsis of why he thinks we've been off the air. But let me start by saying, Andrew, welcome back.
Thank you, everybody. It's good to be back after a little hiatus there.
Excellent. And Mitch, welcome back to the microphones.
Yep, back again.
So, Mitch, why have we been off the air so long?
Curses. Yes. The last time we were going to come to do the recording, I was out at the Botanical Gardens with my wife and kids. She went, I hope you go lose your game, because I was walking off to my car and the kids were losing it over some reason or another.
You were supposed to be going for a game, didn't you?
It's supposed to be going for a game, but then it would end up becoming, we'll do a podcast recording. So I said to her, we're not having a game, we're going to do a podcast recording. She goes, well, I hope your podcast explodes then. And we got in and we tried to get it set up, and none of the equipment would work for us properly. It couldn't pick up one of the mics, and then it did pick up both, and then it had lots of feedback and stuff. So unfortunately, we've had that real life stuff going on, people being sick, people being away on holidays, and just general scheduling stuff that we just can't get it lined up. But here we are. We managed to get a night lined up that we can actually go out and have a chat with you guys.
And so far, no curses or shenanigans have occurred.
No, touch wood. So.
Exactly. Look, we've had lots of personal stuff going on. We've had a lot of tech issues with our sound. I know our last episode was very choppy. So please give us feedback on any of our social medias that you can. We're setting up a new Facebook group where people will be able to engage with us as well. So stay tuned for that. We'll post it up. Details on the Podbean site where most of our stuff is hosted, but also through our social media accounts on Instagram. And you can find out what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, speaking about what's going on, very briefly, before we get into our main bolt action-y topic, what has been on the hobby tables recently?
I've been just plugging away at stuff. I have been getting my army ready for Moab, so we'll go into a bit about that in a short while. So I've been I actually had most of my army already painted, which is good thanks to the 365 challenge. But I've been finishing off the last couple of vehicles I need to get done. So getting some of that, building some terrain, making some hills, because out of all the terrain I have, I don't actually have hills. Yeah. So you need some positions that, some of your artillery can sit on. Painting up Silver Bayonet, getting a few things done there, and getting some stuff prepped up for one of our other games. We're going to look at having an episode down the line for some Stargrave, using some Star Wars figures.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, apart from that, same old. So work, life, kids, the whole lot. What about you, Andrew?
Very heavy focus on bolt action for me. So I had a little challenge for myself to finish off the US Army and then start my British. I was not allowed to start my British until I finished the US, so that was a very good way to challenge me. A little segue into some German guards for a little rule set that I'm working on the side for individual skirmish missions. And a couple of airplane markers just for the hell of it with model aeroplanes. I think they were the 172 scale.
Yeah,
I'll have to confirm that. So not the correct scale for the game, but the correct scale to make it look like they're flying above the battles.
Awesome.
Thanks to our new gaming mate, Drew, who was inspired you on that one.
So. He did. As soon as I heard the word model aeroplanes again, I was a little boy and I needed to make them and paint them.
Excellent. Well, there's a ton of hobby going on. I've been doing... realized I had some pretty big gaps in my army for Moab. And I was umming and ahhing about what to take, and decided to go with my French force that opposes Mitch's themed force for our Colmar campaign, which we've had a game for.
Yes.
Which just our first 750 or 500 point game.
500 points, yeah.
So we've already just scraped the ice off the outer layer of the wintry Colmar setting. Thought it was really fun. And Mitch's table just keeps growing. Every time we catch up, there's more and more on it.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a fair bit of work on those, but I did get distracted by some stuff for Infinity and a whole bunch of fantasy stuff because we've been off for, I realized it was like 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
3 months is a long time. So I've touched base on like 7 different game systems. Just like a squad here, or I did up a Stargrave team, and then I did some Fallout stuff, and yeah, I've been all over the shop. So we're pretty keen to get heavily sunk back into the bolt action stuff, especially with Moab. At time of recording is 3 weeks away.
Bit over 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't had a single game with our full lists. So we've got quite a bit of work to do.
And welcome back for State of the Game. So this is where we're going to have a quick chat about all the stuff that's been coming out for bolt action over the last few months. Considering it's been a while, we've had the US book come out, the British book come out, and pretty much all the stuff for the Soviet book come out as well. So we're going to have a quick chat about some of the bits and pieces that we found interesting out of the books, some of the games that have been played using the US and the British books, and sort of what's mainly for me, I guess, what's on the lookout for the new Soviet book as to what might be, something pretty handy to have.
Totally. So the US book affects Andrew and myself, because I play Winter US and Andrew plays Paratroopers. Then
I just get shot by them.
Yeah, it's a really great way to work around it.
Yeah.
You do a fair bit of shooting back, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The British book affects Andrew because he also picked up a Red Berets army.
I did, yes. British Airborne.
And then one of our other mates, Lee, is doing, 2 different British forces?
He is doing 2 different
Commonwealth forces.
With Commonwealth, I think is what he's doing. So he might have to wait a bit longer for the Commonwealth book to come out. But I know he has grabbed the British book to go through and do something in the meantime.
Yeah, so he's got his Scottish army that he'll use the British book for, and then he's looking at an Australian 8th army using the Commonwealth book.
No, nice.
All right. And you could, for anybody out there, you can still use Commonwealth armies just using the basic British rules for now. Both of those books came out with, as we expected, similar to the German book, a themable narrative option where you could take, what was the German one, for the Fatherland?
Yeah, for the Fatherland.
So you could put upgrades on different units to make them Gebirgesjäger, Fallschirmjäger, or SS.
Waffen SS, yeah.
And so there's similar versions in all of these. Now, I think they're all doing pretty good.
Yep.
We might start with the US one. The US one has, for air, land, and sea, I think it's said in a different order, but it only makes sense to me to say it that way. And that allows you to theme your troops as Marines, Rangers,
or
airborne, right? So, Andrew, you've got an entire airborne force. How is that working out for you?
Yeah, look, it's been a bit of a rewrite for me, to be honest, with the new book. So obviously points changes, complement changes, things that I can take. The addition of being able to really bulk out that officer squad into an entire squad.
Yeah.
Very, very handy for me. I do prefer a more defensive play style, so having a full squad with an officer, really great just to hold the line somewhere. Overall, I was a little disappointed in the book, but it was more from the sense of I'm a very narrative-driven player. So I love a good scenario. I love a good bit of fluff in the rule book. Not to get me wrong, there was a good amount of fluff in the rulebook, but no kind of scenarios, no campaigns, nothing other than basically an army list. However, in saying that, the amount of extra units that are put in and the amount of fluffy units, the little things that you don't think of, like military police, or some of the like the Philippine squads, things like that, it's just a really great little addition. They can serve some really good purposes in your army. Like if I go back to the military police for a second, the British have basically an exact copy of this unit, but they're a really interesting squad. So having the ability to have a +1 for your reserve rolls for vehicles, that start off the board, basically like a traffic control thing for them. But also being able to re-roll failed rally checks within 6 inches. Really handy, especially if you've got some more regular or inexperienced based army.
If you have an officer nearby as well, that's even better.
Yeah.
So
And
exactly.
I would imagine once you've done your job of bringing your reserves on early, then it means that those guys actually have another purpose. They can run up to where the fighting is thickest and have that re-roll on your rally checks to get your troops up and fighting fast.
Yeah. They're nothing to sniff at either. Like you can take basically a regular squad worth of options, They can be inexperienced, regular, veteran, depending on where in the war you want to set them.
They can be on bikes, can't they?
The British ones can. I'm not sure about the American ones.
Yeah.
But they're really handy for just another infantry squad with a really cool special rule.
Yeah, awesome.
But like the heavy weapons, you can take an infantry squad, like a squad of basic infantry within the heavy weapons platoon.
Yes.
To give you that extra flexibility of having more troops on the field.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just need that one extra rifle squad, but you don't want to take an entire new platoon to do it.
Yeah.
Granted, they're not as big in the heavy weapons platoon. Like, you can't take as many men in the rifle squad. But as you said, really handy for just a couple extra bodies.
A couple extra shots, to be honest. So just even if you're throwing out a pin marker just to keep something pinned in place.
Especially with the US rule for the extra shot for every 3 rifles, that really starts to add up with all the extra squads that you can put on the board.
Absolutely. When we've played, since the new book came out, I've been on the receiving end of those extra, 2 or 3 shots from squads that you look at them and you go, it's only 6 guys, I'll be fine. And then they throw out 8 shots, and you're like, that's close enough to a full squad. That was it was just more than I was expecting, and that's a nice little way to guarantee a couple extra, guarantee the pin, and then guarantee maybe 1 or 2 extra wounds or something on there.
All in all,
that's been good.
All in all, really happy with the book. Like I said, it's basically been a complete rewrite of my army list to kind of get those new combat combinations to work. But it's really, really cool. Like, I can actually represent Easy Company a little bit better to the way that I would like to play it with those new options.
Yeah.
So have any of us played with the new British rules, whether against somebody or using them since they came out?
Yep. Yeah, so I've had a game.
Andrew's got everything going on.
Look, just pulling out new armies, new rules, everything everywhere.
Yeah, you've had 3 months.
Well, exactly. 3 months is more than enough to paint a whole British army. What are you talking about? So
says the guy with 2 elite veteran armies.
Yes, I do have a sucker for being a veteran army list player.
I'm on the inexperienced side, and then tell me how fast an army gets painted. Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, so look, the Brits have a similar rule for, as the other books do, for King and Country. It allows you to kind of theme around either the commando brigades or around the airborne divisions or around the guards.
Yeah.
Really, really cool, flavorful options for all of them. So the guards let you shed an extra pin, which can be very, very handy. They're airborne are stubborn veterans. And the commandos have some really cool special rules that come with them. So I kind of themed my British around Market Garden, or basically anywhere in Europe, to be honest, with a couple of SAS squads just for flavour. To be honest, it's pretty identical to my US Army when you start breaking it down, given that they're both a paratrooper army. They've both basically got the same squad loadouts and things like that. It's really just the national rule that sets it apart.
Yeah.
So which of the national rules stand out to you as having the most impact on changing the play style?
To be honest, I don't think that the rules like, by air, land, and sea or, King and Country have a huge impact on the actual gameplay other than allowing you to really flavor those army lists. I think it's the things like, the national special rules that have that impact. So, the Germans getting the extra shot from the LMGs, the Americans getting the extra shot from the rifles, the Brits get extra melee damage, which, in this edition is brutal, especially if I chuck it on an SAS squad. Like, that thing is going to go down swinging or it's going to start chomping through your troops.
Yeah.
I love them from the flavour point of view. Like, I want to take airborne, I can actually take a proper airborne army.
Yeah. That was always something from last edition, that not being able to go, well, I've got 3 airborne infantry squads and then I've got to take just a regular old veteran or whatever you might want to do. You got to take just a basic version of that MMG or mortar team or command squad or whatever it might be. Apart from some of the selector books, like the D-Day selector books or, any of those sorts of things, the campaign books actually having the extra rules that say, you can take this version of this force, you'll have this upgrade for these squads.
Yeah.
having it now as part of the actual just regular rules, it is really quite nice. So for the Fatherland, all the ones that have got coming through, even for the new ones for the Soviet book, I think there are good points. They're all positives, but there are some areas where it can feel a little bit lacking because some of it might feel a little bit samey. Like one thing, looking through from the American to the British version, you've got your or even including the German book, and so now for the Soviet book as well, you have airborne. Everyone has airborne.
Yep.
It's one of those things that you'll have, like it is handy to have. Yes, they were real forces, but in the case of the Soviet book, they weren't really utilized like every other airborne division. They really didn't have combat drops. They were pretty much just elite foot infantry.
I suppose though, like that's the same when you look at the German book with is it the Fallschirmjäger that were paratroopers, but then banned from being paratroopers after a disastrous drop.
Crete went really bad.
Yeah.
So at the end, it's just representing that kind of elite core of the army.
Well, that's the thing. I think you'll definitely see with like the Italian book coming up. It'll be their Italian paratroopers. I'm going to butcher it. I'm going to. I will mess it up, and I'll have someone.
Paracutizia.
Someone has pronounced it very clearly.
Italian paratroopers.
Italian paratroopers. Yeah. So, and I'm sure someone is sitting there screaming at if any of our Italian listeners, if we have any, is screaming. They're going, "Don't say it right. Say it right." So, but yeah,
Miss Guzzi.
Yeah. I think we'll see that as one of their rules as well, because that was a pretty major force fighting in the desert. So it'll be a common theme.
All the paratroop units have had stubborn as their rule.
Yeah.
So we can assume stubborn across the board. Yeah. I know there were 2 of the American units had stubborn as their rule. I think it was Marines and the airborne. I don't know. There was some like that could have been nicer if there was something different, but I think it's still okay if you've got 2 units that are renowned for being stubborn.
Yeah,
they can be stubborn. I don't know a lot of what's been put out for the Russian stuff yet. I've been pretty lax on reading through the Warlord Games community stuff. So have they mentioned a similar rule for Russia, close to the Fatherland rule? And what do we know what units we're looking at?
So you've got the NKVD, which get Fanatic, so you can upgrade those. So they're like the internal police troops. They get Fanatic. You've got the naval troopers get Tough Fighter. So for an extra amount, you've got the parachute, the airborne. So, and was there one other? I'm going to draw a blank and can't remember.
So it's NKVD, paratroopers, and one more.
And the naval troopers. Yeah.
So that's 3. Everyone else has had 3.
3, yeah. So everyone's had 3. Look, I think while they're quite good, and they have put a thing out about some of the different units in the Soviet Scouts, which have been apparently quite a very powerful option because you can infiltrate the whole army. I haven't really kept abreast of all of that.
Are you trying to say that they're not very powerful when you routinely shred our flanks with them?
Yeah,
some people say that they're quite powerful.
No, they've changed the way. Brad had a conversation with this one regarding that with the new book. They've also released it up on the Warlord Games. They've gone through and they've changed the way the scouts work. So you can only have 1 unit per platoon can infiltrate. So you have infiltrators rule. You can still load them up with SMGs, so that's still quite handy. But if you want to take quite a much more scout heavy platoon, you can still do that. You do get some extra benefits, that sort of thing. So, but yeah,
I mean, they can still outflank, even if they're not infiltrating. But the infiltrating ones will be a different benefit, I guess.
Yeah, so they'll give you. They'll be harder to go through and dig out of cover once they sit in it. So I think that if you manage to get up nice and close, hide in cover, as long as you're not down, you're going to get the bonus to your cover save as well. There are advantages there for taking them. I think where they might have missed the mark as far as some of the stuff is they haven't included the Siberian troops. As an actual faction, you can take Siberian. I'd imagine you'd be able to take Siberian squads, and they can take, in the old book, Tough Fighter, which was a very cool thing to represent like the whole massive group of troops being shipped over from the east all the way through to the western side of the Union, and then going through and fighting from there. I think that they could have gone through and done that as Siberian troops, as being an actual like rule for the motherland, or I can't remember the title that they use for it, but for their national special rules for the choosing your army, that could have been quite an interesting one because that could give you fanatic on stuff, But again, if you want to do that, you could take just NKVD and say, oh, it's my Siberian army, I'm using the NKVD rules.
Yeah, there's flexibility there.
Or one that I would have really liked to see, I know I'm talking a fair bit about this, but about the Soviet book, but basically, instead of having a national rule that would be for specific army types, like the airborne or anything like that, would actually go through and have siege defenders as an idea. So that would have things like the siege of Moscow, Leningrad, Stalingrad, in the Crimea, Sevastopol, doing that kind of stuff. You could actually take a force that would be, city defenders, and which means you would be able to upgrade them to have fanatic because they were essentially fanatical troops anyway. Because of the whole not one step back sort of thing, especially from our old theme forces from Stalingrad.
Yeah,
I had the option of taking fanatic on everything in that old selector, and I think that could have been something that could have been a quite good hit for them this time round. It was to go, hey, we could do this instead.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's balance options, and potentially we've got campaign books that'll come out down the line that can theme those things in,
and
hopefully they'll be bringing in the scenarios that these books are lacking, because they are. We've got good standard scenarios, and the scenario generator means we get a wide variety of scenarios at the moment. But to really theme up, particularly for narrative players, themed missions, it will be great to see some of those back.
100%.
Yeah, definitely that sort of thing would sort of fill that gap. But it also depends on what they do with, especially like with the Soviet book, if they bring out those rules as part of the actual unit entry. To go through and say, if you want to take a militia squad, you can make them defenders of this, give them fanatic, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's an easy way to go through and fix that. And so that's a very minor thing from my side of things, but I just thought it would be an interesting take if they just went that direction rather than just going, oh, hey, you got airborne. Like, they weren't used in large numbers. Yeah. So, but it does make a very cool looking force because the models look sick as hell, the Warlord game ones. So, and they're big, big suits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, look, there's probably 2 points that I would want to make. One's back on the British book, which I'll go back to in a second. But I think there's only so much variety that they can introduce.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're not playing fantasy. We're not playing 40K. We're playing a historical World War II game. So, we can't have really crazy powerful units or things like that. We are just talking men.
Yeah. Or even just, you can't have too many special rules on one unit without them becoming top heavy.
Exactly, 100%.
Get the Death Star sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to finding that unit profile that has the rules that you're wanting and just theming an army around that with your play style, your, doing the Siberians, whatever it is. If I go back to the British book for a second, Tim, you asked about rules that are affecting the game. And as we've been talking about the Soviet book, it came back to me about the officer special rule, which is extra leadership, fantastic, but lower cover save. Now,
you got to stand out and wave around and tell people to do things.
Well, exactly. You've got to have a stiff British upper lip.
Yeah.
But what I find with that for me is that it actually takes away the attractiveness of having the additional bodies with the officer squad. You're putting a lot of points into a squad to protect that officer for bodies that then aren't as actually durable as what the other armies are. So, if I look at, for example, I would love to do a Paddy Main character for my SAS. Obviously, he would be like a platoon or a company commander, given his rank. To theme it, I would want to have my SAS squad with him. But that's now at one less cover save for a veteran unit, which I would want to keep in the fight for as long as possible. So I think that's probably one rule in particular where I'm like, actually, that does affect how I play my game. Which also leads into, there's a bit of discussion, I will say politely, at the moment around, there's an option that you can take with the commando squads, which is a second lieutenant.
Yes.
It's basically a platoon officer, just with one less special rule. the confusion or the discussion that is going around a lot is whether that second lieutenant is also subject to the -1 cover rule
Right. Okay.
that applies to officers. Now,
in which case, why would you take it in a full
Well-
squad? You're loading out like 120 plus points.
exactly, but in my opinion, I just can't see where the confusion comes from. Like the option clearly states that he takes the rules of a platoon commander with these negatives, to just basically set him apart. He's one rank less than a normal lieutenant.
Yeah.
So if he takes the rules of a platoon commander, he's subject to the officer rule, which means he has the -1 cover save. So I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, you see it on your different forums and the discussions that go with it. And I'm sitting here on my high horse going, well, I mean, I read it this way, so that's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a very interesting one where, there's a rule that is probably as clear as it needs to be, but generates quite a lot of discussion in the gaming community because, obviously, it is, as Mitch said, like that's the difference between, well, that could be an officer that doesn't really have the officer rule. Cool, of course I'm going to take that in every squad. Or is it actually worth it to then bring down the survivability of a commando squad?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think there's elements here that force us out of our original sort of thought patterns for some of these things. So we'll take the Paddy Main squad, for example. The rulebook isn't designed to think of him as like a frontline officer, although sometimes the short range on some officers means they have to be frontline to stay with the men.
Yeah.
And I guess you could kind of imagine it as his like brash battlefield approach, like being shouting and swearing at the troops to get the best out of his men. And the benefit is to the whole force, or at least to the squads within 6 or 12 of him, their leadership bubble is going to be the big advantage, not his survivability. It's tricky. It's a balance, but I mean, potentially, I was a little bit surprised that you said it makes you less inclined to take the bodies, because it would make me more inclined. I would want more bodies.
Ablative armor.
Yeah, to counter the fact that they're going to be a bit gung-ho and going to take more hits. I go, you know what? Veterans are getting hit on 5s anyway. If a bit of creative use of line of sight blocking terrain rather than cover might help to mitigate some of that stuff. But once we get through a few more games, we'll be able to see whether it impacts in a great way or if it's like a thorn where you're like, damn it, I wish that was the cover save I expected.
Yeah, I don't think it's I think it leads more along the lines of leading from the front. So instead of having someone sitting at the back like you would see with some armies, they're like, yeah, send the men forward, like, not actually being right in the mix of things. Yeah. British officers were more often than not actually in the mix. They were actually fighting. They were a linchpin of morale. So it does fit really quite well as far as background-wise and theme-wise when you're making your army. Yes, it is changing the game for the benefit. Maybe if they had it as an option, you could take. So instead of actually having it as you only get this, it's like your British officers may either have the keep the cover save, but don't get the +1 morale to the morale bonus, or you could take this. That as an option, no points. Don't have to charge for it because it's literally a trade off.
Yeah.
So you could have the less cover save, but have +3. I mean, in all honesty, the amount of times where under the old second ed rules where you would have like 5 or 6 pins on a unit and you're like, well, this is going to be really hard to pass, or even like 2 or 3. Having your leadership, especially on regular troops, I suppose for veterans it doesn't make too much of a difference, but for regular or inexperienced troops, having +2 or +3, big difference between +2 and +3. So especially if you've got like a couple of pins on you, so to try and pass that test, and especially for something like, let's say for guards units, having the ability to shed 2 pins on a passed order and you've got +3 to it. So it means that even for a veteran guards unit that has 2 pins on it, you go, well, I'm going to take my test. I'm 10 normally. I'm now 13. You're only going to fail on a 12 because a 12 is always going to fail. Is going to foobar on that. That gives you a much better opportunity to try and pass even at the negatives for the pins. So
it's very play style dependent. Like if you're going to play,
that's what it's going to come down to.
Like if you're going to play them aggressively, as Tim said, you're going to need to get a little bit creative in your positioning of your troops. If you're a very defensive player, it might be a bit of a thing for you. But as we said, need to play some games. This is all rules theory for me at the moment. Just looking at the rule book. So I need to actually roll some dice.
Sure.
Hug that cover, man. So you may as well hug it if you're going to get no real, no extra benefit. Hide behind that wall.
Yeah. Well, let's leave the infantry for a minute, because one of the big changes for third edition was tank platoons. And I know a lot of special rules have made their way across into the tanks. I get very excited when there are different options like fast tanks, light tanks, and just a variety of things on the field, and everything's not just medium tank, 9+ the wound kind of thing. There's a lot more variety. Have you guys noted, or have you predicted anything for Mitch, for your Soviet book, that's going to change about the vehicles that you're choosing?
Look, I think most of the bog standard vehicles people take, like Panzer IV, Tiger One. For the British, it's British and Americans like a Sherman or a Cromwell, or not a Cromwell, Churchill or something like that.
I think my Cromwell.
Cromwell's pretty good.
No doubt, it is very good. So, but I mean, would you take a Sherman Firefly or a Cromwell?
Ooh.
With the trade-off for the extra heavy hit versus the speed of a Cromwell, because doesn't the Cromwell have fast?
Different jobs, though.
It depends on the options that you're taking.
Yeah. I like the bog standard M4 Sherman otherwise, right?
It's like saying, would you rather use a tennis racket or a cricket bat? And depends what I'm doing.
One of the dead style. Yeah. Look, for my Soviets, the humble old, T-34, 76, it's not game breaking, but it's a good workhorse of a machine. And with the rules that they brought out for the Tractor Factory, one that they brought out in the rules teaser, being able to go through and have a reduced value T-34 that isn't so crash hot at doing things, fair enough. But that was the Tractor Factory list that was out in one of the books, which actually was at Moab last year. One of the guys ran it. It was very nice looking army as well. So being able to take multiple tanks really cheaply, it's quite well. And I think this works well also for British books taking if you're taking an early war BEF army, you want to take some Vickers or something like that, or if you're playing like an American force that's going to be a bit more on the lighter side. I mean, I think what the lightest you get is still going to be a Sherman anyway. I think with some of the other armies like the Empires of Japan and some of the other lighter tanks for the Russians, and the early light tanks like the Panzer I's and Panzer II's, the Martyrs and things like that for the Germans, they're all going to have their place, because it depends on your army style. If you want to go for, and this is going off listening to a bunch of other podcasts like Tabletop Tommies and a few others, where there seems to be your bog standard rifle platoon and then an armoured infantry company in most armies. So you're not seeing it in every army, because some people go, no, go on infantry and big guns, so like anti-tanks. So
the heavy weapons platoons are very popular too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I'm running infantry and heavy weapons in mine, and then an armored platoon in my army for Moab. So you're running with airborne. Everything's pretty much going to be transported by hand or dropped in.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You don't have as much of the armor except for relief column stuff.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's the cost of them. And look, granted, they need to be. They're a tank, but they do take up a significant amount of points when you need a minimum of 2 vehicles in that armoured platoon, one being the command vehicle and another vehicle. That takes up a lot of points straight away. So, as you said, rifle platoon and an armoured platoon, if you want to take any amount of tanks in your army, you need to lose something else. So, if I'm looking at my airborne, I would have to choose between my anti-tank heavy weapons teams or some Shermans. Like, I cannot fit both. They're just too expensive to do. And even when you're using things like, a Greyhound and a Sherman, or for my British, I've got one of the Scout cars and a Cromwell, that's still a decent chunk of points. So I'm only either using them in larger games that we play, where we're like, screw it, let's do 2,000 points. Or if I need to put them in a smaller list, I am losing out. Now, again, though, that's because I play 2 veteran armies, and there's a lot of points sink there.
Well, look, even for your armies, Tim, like, you've got a bunch of tanks for your German armies, and you don't have any for your French, because you've gone more for that, inexperienced sort of like heavy weapons, but you do have a few things that you can chuck in.
So for my French, I do have tanks, but because it's a narrative list, I have lend-lease vehicles for them. So I've got Shermans and Scots and things and Wolverines that were all present in Colmar, but they're not in the French list, so I don't use them for Moab. I have no armor. And that's quite a disadvantage because I love a bit of armor. It's part of my playstyle. So I'm running a very different list for that, which we'll talk about later on. For me, the big thing is there's a lot more variety in what the vehicles can do. I think the Cromwell is a fast vehicle.
I think so. I haven't really gone into the rules yet, but I think when you just said that, it's not only the variety of what the vehicles can do, it's now the sheer variety of vehicles. That US book and the British book, a significant portion of the army list pages is vehicles. Every variety you can think of, all of the different trucks, all of the different like little cars, everything like that. You have a huge variety of vehicles to fit the purpose that you're trying to build with your army.
Which is great for tailoring narrative as well. And the fact that narrative can kind of throw some force selection out the window.
Because, I mean, with your... suppose on that, as far as, like some of the special rules like fast, that sort of thing, can affect how you choose your, like, armor platoon if you are going to take one. The other thing is, like Andrew mentioned, you're dropping stuff out if you want to take some of the bigger stuff, like the big cats for the Germans, taking tigers, king tigers, panthers, that kind of thing. You will actually go through and dump a lot more points in that, but you get something that is probably more of a psychological advantage as well, because you can sit there and basically take most hits coming in. So I know you had a game against Andrew at some point there where you were using some of your armor, but you're mainly still using your Panzer IIIs. Is that right?
Look, I don't have any Panzer IIIs. It's a common misconception. Social media gets stuffed. But I've got Panzer IVs, but they're early war, so they're pretty close. And they've just got a light howitzer on them, just a light howitzer. But that said, they are cheaper variant tanks. They've both got HE and 2 MMGs on them. So they still put out plenty of firepower. And I use them because they're painted. So I'm not tactically fielding them there because a lot of the time the games that I'm playing aren't all set in that kind of mid to early war. I'm just using them because they're painted, and I really enjoy using fully painted lists at the moment. But I've got like Panzer IVs with the like Alsef Gs that are much later in the war. They've got like the big heavy AT guns on them. Got a couple of Tigers that we've used. But it's the flexibility in rules, like that there are fast vehicles. There are lots of different light vehicles. There are vehicles that keep drawing my eye from the German selectors that are command vehicles to start with. So they already have the command upgrade on them, and then you don't have to pay for it to make them a command tank. But there are some that are communications vehicles, and they're giving you that same +1 to reserve rolls. I think it might be re-rolls, but they're communication ones with a big old aerial on the back. And I was like, that is going to be great because I'm going to have different troops coming in or outflanking, and I'd love to make that work. And I know they changed the rules for some of those because one of them was way too efficient. It was like a 5-man transport and a communications transport and a command vehicle, and they were like, "Nah, it can." That radio takes up the space of 5 men. You can have one or the other.
Or you could just have a Soviet vehicle that is putting like hand turn signal scout.
That's correct.
And just for reference, the Cromwell is a fast vehicle.
There you go.
And to further fuel the Cromwell-Churchill debate, Churchills are slow, so they can go away.
Look,
well, they have their place.
They have their place. It's like a KV1 or a KV2. It's slow as well, but it's designed not to be fast. So it's designed to take hits and keep going.
Look, I think that might wrap us up for what we've thought about the recent books and what we're looking forward to in the new ones. We're going to take a quick breather, and then we'll come back to talk about our prep for the upcoming Moab tournament. In the next 3 weeks, Mitch and I are heading up to Moab. Andrew's going to come up and have a look around as well, but
not joining in.
No poking.
No, come on. No, don't resist, man. Join us. Join us.
There's an ongoing thing where Mitch is a pretty avid tournament goer. I go along as well. I enjoy it, but I'm not a super tournament-y person, but Andrew is not a huge tournament player. And there are many various reasons for these, and they're all very valid. And as we used to say in our old GW days, it's all different slices of the hobby pie. Everyone's pie chart has different strengths and different wedges at different volumes.
I will say Lord of the Rings with Andrew, though, he is very competitive with that. I had something come up in my news feed that was a photo of us having a practice game before I think it was for a staff tournament, because I had my blue pistol in the army.
Yeah.
It was from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were very, very competitive in that game.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about Lord of the Rings, but that is the one game that got my competitive juices flowing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but you do play a very hard game, even playing you know our games we play for bolt action.
Yeah,
so.
look, I think I suppose we'll dive into it a little bit. I do enjoy the competitiveness. I do enjoy, especially the competitive between our group. But I think it's because obviously we all get along quite well. We've known each other for so long. So, I am perfectly comfortable grinding one of you into the dust. But I think for me, what I don't enjoy about the competitive side is, and I know I've said this before, and I know that it's not in every tournament. That's fine. It does sometimes attract that level of people that are very rules lawyery. And I know for myself, I make tons of mistakes during games.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, for me, I don't know, it's just an instinctive fear about tournaments of knowing my own shortcomings with rules and, the little mistakes that I'll make throughout a game. I've got 50-something sets in my head. I'm going to confuse them all the time like we do.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this instinctive fear against coming up against someone who is of that mindset and it ruining my fun. And
Sure.
I've never really been able to get over that into proper competitive tournaments. The ones we used to run at GW, fine. We had a really good community of people that came. There was nothing for the most part like that. But as much as I enjoy going to tournaments and seeing them and watching it all, I will get there eventually.
Yeah. Well, the group of guys that we played against last year at MOAB were really great bunch of guys. You had some competitive edge to the gaming, which is always cool. But it's one of those things that I go, as Tim said, he comes along because I go along. It's I go along. I used to play a lot of fantasy tournaments quite competitively in the early 2000s. But you know what? I go because I get a guaranteed weekend of gaming.
Yeah.
So I get 5 to 6 games, and the kids get it for me for Father's Day to get me the ticket for MOAB. So that's what I do. And I don't go there to win. I go there to. They call it submarining, where you go under the radar and then you pop up at the end. If you know the term submarining, I depth charge. I just go in and if I bomb out, I bomb out. Wherever place I come, I get to have a bunch of games, I get to roll some dice, have some fun. So.
I'm going to dive real deep and then I'm going to explode.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, here's the challenge for next year, right? Let's get some Inglorious Banter shirts together. Let's go as a dynamic trio.
There you go.
There's your commitment.
2026.
Okay,
We'll go.
It's
Excellent.
recorded for the ages. Someone write it in stone.
So on that note, we were talking to Julian, who's the organizer, and when you register, you can list down your team. So Mitch and I are both going to list our team as Inglorious Banters.
Yep.
And Julian was kind enough when I was like, oh, look, my list is pretty trash. Because my French list has had one test game at 1,000 points. And it's not built for comp. It's built for fielding in a themed narrative campaign against Mitch, right? Mm. And I was like, look, it's pretty trashy, but it's for playing against Mitch. And he was like, oh, I can put you guys against each other in the first game. And that way you can grudge match to start, which is a pretty common thing in a lot of tournaments.
Yep.
So if you're up MOAB, come straight over to the bolt action tables, look for Mitch and I, and play some bets on who's going to get trounced the first game out.
Well, put it this way, it always seems to be whenever we go to a tournament together, we always play together. And it's usually the third game of day one, because we've both had 2 losses. Yep. We're both right and pretty low in the rankings.
We're on the kiddie table by that point.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but every time we play a game, I think we are louder than everybody else.
Yeah, we just get into it.
Especially our Star Wars one. We had a lot of people
Yeah.
looking over us, so we were having way too much fun rolling dice.
Yep.
It's
And
our
like
old,
killing Wookiees and like
Yeah.
stormtroopers getting like annihilated by bowcaster shots.
it's just our old GW antics. Like,
Yeah.
you needed to be loud and boisterous and run that game
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
great as you can.
And I know being quiet isn't going to help my tactics at all. I'm still gonna-
Distraction tactics.
Still going to make the
Just
same
a really
mistake.
bad French accent the whole time,
Yeah.
the whole game.
So we're going to talk a bit about MOAB. I know we've already touched on it there, but it's really important to remember that within your hobby group, the people that aren't going to tournaments are still part of your tournament prep.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can play any game against Andrew and just say, hey, I want to test out my lists for this. He knows he's going to get a good game because he'll fight tooth and nail. I'll fight tooth and nail, and we'll test out stuff. You can probably even ask people within your little social meta and say, look, I really want to see how my list does against heavy armored forces because I think that's a weakness. And
Yeah.
it gives other players in your group more excuses to field forces they don't normally, to break out of their trends.
Exactly, yeah.
And go, you know what, like Andrew fields mostly veteran infantry, but he might just throw all of his tanks on because Mitch has to test out how he does against tanks. Or
Poorly.
vice versa. You know, he might run his dudes as inexperienced for one game to see how they go.
Yeah.
You have to do all of that, Andrew. That's the deal.
Look, I can take my paratroopers as glider infantry, which
Oh,
can
right.
be a little bit worse.
Oh,
Yeah.
what regular? Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, they can be inexperienced.
Can
with
they?
British.
Oh, yeah, run experience for it. So.
So, in the lead up for tournaments, depending on what your style is, a lot of people just rock up on the day and go, I've literally played no games with my list, but it's what I play at the club normally. Here's what I'm doing. Mitch and I tend to throw around a lot of our lists, and we talk about them in our gaming group and say, hey, what do you guys think about this?
Mhm.
So talk to your gaming group if you're looking to go to a tournament and say, look, here are the things that I'm getting into. Post that up on your Facebook page or on your Instagram or whatever and say, this is what I'm planning to take. How does this look?
Yeah.
And then that gives you an opportunity.
Yeah, the other thing would be is even if you haven't had a chance to go to a tournament, whether you're a bit apprehensive about going to one, look, most tournaments, especially for games that aren't, I'll put this, ultra competitive, such as, say, 40K, which is like only play with this type of terrain, it's set terrain features, that kind of thing. I think having other tournaments where you have people that will play that competitive edge, yes, but there's a lot of people who are going that might be their first couple of games, so it might have only been like the weekend before because they wanted to jump in and they want to join in. They've played, pick up games, whatever it might be, but then they actually want to get in and actually have a crack at it. It's worth having a go because most of the guys, depending on the scene, will be quite nice about it. They'll they'll help you out with rules and stuff. I know that when I've played at the last tournament, it was a bit like there was a few things I was getting a bit wrong, that sort of stuff, and it was kind of picked up. I'm like, cool, I'll remember that. So things like rules I was just forgetting because I never used to use them because they wouldn't come up in our practice games. So things like that, I don't use a lot of vehicles. So in my armies, like ever really. So regardless of what type of game it is, I don't use vehicles. So that's going to be a new learning curve for me to do over our one practice game we're going to get. So, being able to go through and learn how to do some new stuff as well. Look, there are some guys that will show you things when you're on the day. So, yeah, worth even just jumping in and having a go.
So one of the interesting things about MOAB this year is that the points list is 2 points list.
Yep.
So day one is 725 points lists, and then the day two must include that same 725 list, but goes up to a total of
1175.
Yeah, 1175.
Yep.
And I continuously got those wrong. I kept making 750 and then 1250, and then I've been chopping and changing stuff all over the place. But initially, that I was just like, cool, I'm not going to MOAB this year. Because I was just like, that's too much for my brain to have two different lists and think about two different tactical ways of approaching it. Because a lot of my approach to tournaments in the last few years has been take fewer bells and whistles. On the day, I can't manage that much minute rule stuff, especially for Star Wars Legion, because there's so much synergy between different units and upgrades and things. And it wasn't
It's
until
copy paste units, mate. That's the easiest way of doing it. That's what I did.
But on the day, I'm like, whoa! All these guys have got to do this, and when I play this strategic card, it's going to affect the whole army or 3 units.
Bolt action much simpler on that
absolutely.
side.
And especially in 3rd edition, much smoother.
Yep.
But once I'd looked at it as this is going to be a narrative progression of here's what the force normally looks like, but then they go up to, like they reinforce up to the size for the 2nd day. Then I thought, okay, that's actually pretty cool. And the fact that it must be included. If it was just 2 separate lists, then I wouldn't have been as excited about it.
Yeah.
But the fact that the smaller is included in the larger, I'm actually pretty cool with that.
Yeah, and it did make listing very much a hard thing to do because you do have that finite amount at the lower points level, and then having to include it within the next lot. I think I spent a good sort of 2-3 weeks trying to fine tune just a list that I could take in both, and it was literally down to changing one unit up and down by like a man was really where I was at for it to try and get things to fit.
Especially because it's such a specific points jump as well.
Yeah.
Our lists for Moab take a fair bit of schmoozing and preparation, and we've worked on them quite a while. So we're going to go through and briefly talk about what Mitch and I are taking, and Andrew as our like foil that we often butt heads against in prep. If you're butting heads with a heel, then you're on the ground already, and that's bad.
No, that is bad.
So I'm taking a themed French list, and it's basically troops that were in Colmar, which was mostly inexperienced French infantry and veteran Moroccan Gumier troops. So I've got I'll just do the full list because it includes the smaller. The full list at 1175 has 4 platoons. It has 2 rifle platoons that have, in total, 3 infantry squads that all have double LMGs and a VB launcher.
Mm-hmm.
And I fielded them against Andrew recently, and they just put out a ton of dice. And when they get close enough, they're like, oh, we also threw in a lucky shot from the VB launcher, and that ignored some cover too.
Yeah.
And then I've got 2 10-man squads of veteran Gumiers, which are also tough fighter, which were really dangerous in building clearing as well. I've got a sniper, an artillery observer, who I use as a spotter for my 2 medium mortars as well. And then I've got 2 medium AT guns, and that's my only real anti-tank is them. And a sprinkling of different officers through there to lead the rest of them.
Yeah.
But that's basically it. A lot of inexperienced infantry, a couple of veteran infantry, and then some guns to support, like 2 mortars and 2 AT guns. And that's basically the list.
It was actually a very interesting game, to be honest, the one that we played, because we both took artillery. We both got off extremely effective artillery
The observers,
strikes.
yeah.
They were brutal. But it was a really opposite balanced force. So obviously I played the M1. It was very veteran heavy versus an army that was quite inexperienced. The offset between my ability to kill Tim versus the amount of shots coming back at me was just a really hard thing to balance. And it ended up being basically a knife's edge for the last couple of turns.
Yeah. Especially those little inexperienced squads, or they're not little, they're 10 or 12-man squads, I think, for French. But 2 LMGs in each one, even at 1 point less accurate for inexperience, they're just chucking tons of dice. And they're really effective for that.
Just throwing out a pin on a squad.
Yeah.
While being veteran, you go, oh, well, I'll pass it on a 9, easily more if it's an officer nearby. Just having to cause that order test, and if you do screw it up, well, you go, well, especially with the veteran army being on the receiving end of that, like you kind of like, well, there's a whole squad that's just done for a turn. So
a big part of the impact was also that the French have 2 army special rules where the artillery observers get to fire twice. After the first barrage is done, they get to call in a second one. So that one guy was just chilling at the back and throwing loads more pins effectively, because it was pretty rare that I actually hit anything directly with a blast except my own troops. But there were plenty of just D3 pins all along the front line. And then the lower accuracy of the inexperienced troop means that they were just throwing pins on top of that supporting fire, and that was really impacting Andrew's leadership. That was pretty interesting. The second one, which didn't come up a lot, is that inexperienced troops are very patriotic. So they have a rule that if there's an enemy within 12, they get to shed a pin for free on a 4+ before you give them an order test. So when things get close, they've got a better chance of shrugging it off and not potentially getting rid of their one pin before they even have to get their order, which means they don't need to test. And that can be a really big benefit, because failing those tests from one pin, it's just a punch in the tweed trousers every time it happens. You're like, oh man, I've only got one pin, bam, fail. And then you guys are just sitting there in the dirt.
Yeah, well, I suppose that can happen with any unit though. That's the downside of it. So a lot of inexperienced troops backed up by some veteran Gumiers, which I'm not looking forward to taking on with the tough fight of the old knife cutting, the ear cutting off Gumiers. So
souvenirs.
So my list is my Colmar Pocket Bergsjäger. So yeah, like I said, it was very hard to try and figure out a list that would work for it. I'm actually taking, because it is 725 for the first day, I'm actually only taking 720 points. I could have just chucked something on 5 points onto one of the guys, but I actually needed that 5 points to make the 1175 points work. So I've got 3 infantry squads as the main part of my rifle platoon. So my initial 720 is a rifle platoon and a heavy weapons platoon. Got 3 squads of veteran Gebirgsjäger, so they get the field crafts. So I'm hoping that will help me running through a bunch of terrain. Will be quite handy. I've got SMGs in 2 of the squads, so 3 SMGs in 2 of the squads, and rifle on the 3rd squad. I've got a sniper, which I know some people say snipers aren't good. In all honesty, if I'm going through and I'm maybe picking off one model a turn, and if I can take out, even an officer or something like that. So if there's a single officer running around, especially if it's a British officer sticking his head out from cover, I might be able to go through and take him out. But any small team stuff, just being able to go through and help out with that. So whether he is effective enough during the games, we'll just have to wait and see. And then I've got a heavy weapons platoon with only one guy leading it, but I've got a medium machine gun and a mortar with a spotter. Medium mortar with a spotter. I did actually take a larger squad for my commander. I took like 3 extra men, including the officer. They're all kitted out with SMG, so it's like a little hit team, like kill squad.
Cool.
So that was that. And then for going up to 1175, because these are all veterans and I'm having to pay, like everything is veteran, everything has got Gebirgsjäger upgrade on it. When I go up to the next level, I add in an extra squad of Bergsjäger with assault rifles plus 1 LMG, and that goes to slot straight into the rifle platoon. And then I take an armoured company, which is made up of a veteran Hetzer, because they're cool. They were actually in the Colmar Pocket in the themed force that I'm like the information I'm using. They actually had them. And a Schwimm wagon. So because with a medium machine gun mounted on it. So it's only throwing out a couple of machine gun shots. It's not anything major, but you know what? A couple of extra pin markers and getting it to zip around behind some flanks, that sort of thing, be worthwhile. That's pretty much that. Like that's it for the army. There's not a lot. I think the second list is like 10 or 11 order dice. The only anti-tank I've got is the Hetzer.
Yeah, no Panzerfaust.
I got a single Panzerfaust in each of the infantry squads, so I'm super light on that because at 15 points, it's a lot to take.
It is, but
I did think about taking a Panzer Shrek, but then I'm like, that as a veteran Gebirgsjäger one is like 108 points. And
really?
Yeah, it's way crazy expensive.
Well, the Panzer Shreks are much better. Like they're really solid. Better than a bazooka as well. But that's tough.
But that's the thing. I had to make the trade-off. I could take that. But that would be my extra squad going in.
Yeah.
It was only like a 2-man squad, or I could take another 7-man squad, with, some extra shooty for, assault rifles and stuff. So, look, I don't plan on winning many games with this list. It is themey as hell, though, because it is my thing that we're doing up for the Colmar Pocket, I did want to try and put the Yag Tiger in because I thought, you know what, go big or go home. Unfortunately, the cost of that is more, even at an inexperienced. I can't fit it in that extra bit we have above from 725 to 1175. It will not fit. Full stop. Can't fit it. No way, no how.
And you'd have to be a little bit of a jerk to go, well, I actually put it in my 725 list and then just added more infantry later.
Yeah.
You rock up to the tables on that first day, people start slapping you.
Plonk it down. Well, look, it's big, it's nasty. It will have like a pretty decent HE template because of the size of the gun, but that's not winning me any games. So I went with the Hetzer. Just cool. Like, it's something I haven't, and like I said, I don't use vehicles often, so if at all. So yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see how it runs.
It brings up a point that I'm interested in about this tournament is what are the SKUs going to be like? And for those that aren't initiated in it, the SKU is where you have a theme one way or another, or you heavily invest one way or another in a particular kind of unit. So all of our units Andrew and Mitch's armies are both veteran skewed. They're both veteran themed armies, and so that's their theme. But if I rock up on the day with my cobbled together infantry force and someone goes, I have themed into tanks for the small game, and they might only have 2 inexperienced like T-34s, like from a Russian list.
Or some Vickers
I still
or something,
have 0 that can hurt those. At start. I think inexperienced still don't just take pins from regular fire. Like the only thing I've got that can actually put pins on them would be my mortars because of the +1 pen.
Yeah.
That's really tricky to get around. I can throw a ton of infantry on an objective and just watch them slowly get T-34'd into a mush. But that's going to be really interesting. Or if someone goes really heavy on heavy weapons platoons in the smaller game, and all my infantry getting pasted by mortars, it's just going to be a cool little twist. It's going to keep us on our toes.
Yeah. So, Andrew, what would you look at taking if you were taking your 720 and 1175 lists?
So it's a hard choice for me because, like I said, my US and my British are much a mirror of each other in the sense of composition. I think if I had to choose, I would go my Brits, because I feel like I have got a little bit more flexibility in what I can take to still maintain a theme, but also be a little bit more competitive. So if I was to do it, my 725 would probably be a mixture of paratroopers and glider infantry, so that I can have a little bit of regular as well as veteran, maybe pad out the numbers a little bit more. And I would probably bank on leaving my heavier weapons, like my artillery, to try and get through it with a Piat team, and see how that goes. And then for my larger army, it would be the inclusion of my artillery platoon. So adding in the 2 anti-tanks and my light howitzer for the extra firepower, because that will then, in my mind, that'll help me negate any armor that's added in by other people's jump. Yeah, they're nothing to sniff at. Tim's been on the receiving end of both of those AT guns. They perform a lot better than my US ones, if anyone's listened to the previous podcasts.
Funny that. That's...
so I would take my British. I would be a little bit more thoughtful in my army composition to be a little bit more competitive, and see how that goes.
But I mean, that's the thing. It's like, do you go for theme over competitiveness? Or do you go for look, straight edge competitive? You'll go for whatever like min and max you want to go for. So whatever's going to be like the cutting edge of stuff. Whether it's something you go, well, I can take 6 of these. I'm allowed to. I'm going to do it, sort of thing. Versus say like with theme, like last year I took my Dragon Creek force. It was literally not going to win me a game based on armor capability. Like there's just nothing there to do it. So if I came across anyone, because of the way the platoon structure worked very differently back in version 2, I didn't have to worry about that quite as much.
Sure.
But I still took stuff to mitigate any armor.
Yeah, and I think
Well, I think now with version 3, if I was going to take that army again, I would really have to look at changing what I was going to take to get it to work.
I think that's the beauty of the tournaments are, like in my opinion, the fact that you are trying to cover as many bases as you can. Like when I play you guys, I have a general idea, if not a full idea, of what you are going to take. So I do tend to tailor my lists to what I know about you two to give me the best opportunity of beating you.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm going to a tournament, great, I know you two. What are the chances, other than the fact that we always seem to end up on the same table, of getting to play you? So I need to take a step back and go, well, okay, taking my normal full veteran force might not actually work for a tournament that I don't know what I'm going to come up against. I probably need the flexibility.
That's it. You can play to your own strengths using a list that you know, but it won't necessarily help you out against all the unknown factors from other people's lists. And that's part of the excitement and fun.
Yeah, and I think our French game really actually opened my eyes to that, because it was a very different style of game than you and I have played, and having that broad range of a full veteran army versus a mixed army was actually a really good challenge for me. So knowing that, it's, okay, do I lean into that challenge or do I try and give myself a little bit of a better chance?
Yeah, I think that's one thing I'm going to come up against, being my previous armies usually are a mixture of veterancy. So going all veterans this time around, I think I'm going to have the learning curve is going to be a lot steeper for losing troops, because every man is just so much more in points intensive. So, yeah.
Getting ready for Moab also means preparing for the unknown, and this time we're not preparing for the unknown.
No, Julian, the tournament organizer, has gone through and chucked up a list breakdown, which is pretty interesting. So all the lists we've passed the submission point for lists, which is why we're happy to talk about what we're taking in ours, because no changing now, including not even any practice games.
Yes.
It's just like straight in. So he's given us a breakdown here of the types of armies that are coming along. So what's interesting is there's a pretty decent spread of most armies. We got 3 Italian, which is pretty cool, 9 German, 8 British, 5 US, 1 Japanese player. I wonder if that might be Theo with his Japanese army. So he's got a pretty decent
Japanese list.
We got 2 Soviet players, which is pretty interesting to have only 2 Soviets. 3 French, including yourself.
Yay!
So 1 Polish and 1 Dutch list.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever seen a Dutch list.
No, I haven't come across any of them. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that list goes.
Yeah.
Considering they don't really have much in the way of armor and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe some Vickers light tanks, I think, from their list. So, which, when you're talking about, I don't have much to go up against it, because they're like cheapo tanks, you might actually have them in the 720.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the 9 German is not really any surprise. Germany is a pretty popular faction.
Same with Brits.
So,
well, especially considering, those are the 3 new books.
Yeah.
So, even the US at 5 is pretty close there.
Yeah. So, but 2 Soviet, I mean, I think last year there was more than 2. There was at least 4 or 5, I think, Soviet armies. So,
yeah, I think so.
So there was a decent showing of Soviet armies last year. But then again, because we could use, because we had different force selectors and things like that. Maybe it's kind of changed now because things are a bit different, or because people have got other armies they've dragged back out of retirement or started new. So yeah, it's pretty interesting actually.
I didn't do the maths, but what is that, about 30, 40?
30 players. So
30,
I think there was the count he put up. There's about 30 players. So
nice.
Yeah, it'll be a nice turnout for it. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I get guaranteed games. We've got three on day 1, 3 on day 2. So it is going to be 2 long days. So, or mind you, it depends on how easily we get beat. So then we go check out the stall, say hi to some of the guys we know, and go to check out the
usual motto,
the buy sell, the secondhand stall down the bottom there. So
we usually say there's plenty of time in defeat to go and look at the rest of the convention. And it's very true.
Yeah.
So if you aren't a tournament goer, you should still head up to Moab. I can't remember the dates at the moment. Do you know, Mitch?
So it's the October long weekend. So it is running the Saturday through to the Monday, but most of the gaming's all held on Saturday and Sunday. It's at Sylvania. So check out the Sutherland Shy Gamers. just put in Moab 2025.
Yeah.
You'll be able to find it from there. Or if you're looking for bolt action specific, it's Operation Codswallop. But yeah, look, if you got a chance to come along and check it out, so not just us, check out the other games going on. There's a whole bunch
just
of
come and look at us.
Just come on us, yeah, no, yeah.
But please come and say hi. I know that it's just really fun to meet people that have actually listened to the show and talk to them about what they're doing in their hobby.
Yeah.
We'll have to say, sorry, I just have to go back to this table and get my butt kicked for a minute. But please do say hi if you see us out in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And look, there's a absolute bucket of tournaments that are going on, so there is just eye candy everywhere. If you're like me and you're not the tournament inclined, there is a massive amount of shopping to do. There are lots of stalls that you can go to. Everyone has lovely convention pricing for the most part, so you can get yourself a good deal. And the holy grail of any Moab is the Buy Swap Sell hall, where you will find models, miniatures, books from absolutely everything that you can think of at wonderful pricing and home with a whole heap of stuff.
Yeah, well worth checking it out. Even if you only find maybe one thing in there that you didn't know you needed, well worth grabbing.
Yeah. But you can find things that you need.
Well, no.
I just buy stuff that I want.
No, the swap sale tells you what you need. You don't go telling it what you need.
It's more of a spiritual event than anything
It's a Kmart.
else.
Yeah, that's why I ended up with those Dark Elf shades that have sat in a box for several years from the last time I went.
Hey, look, I walked away from CanCon with most of my US armored vehicles because it told me that that's what I needed.
Yeah, no, worth picking up some bits and pieces if you're expanding on an army, especially with new additions coming out, or Conflict 47, looking for some, maybe some other vehicles, that sort of thing. So
absolutely,
plenty of stuff.
So that's what we're looking forward to for Moab. It's what we're doing in preparation, and we hope to see you there.
And now it's that time again for What's Got Mitch Distracted. Needs its own theme song, right? So, look, it's been a good couple of months since we've gone through and we've recorded. So there has been an awful lot of time to get distracted by stuff.
This is the point where Mitch has got out his notebook of all of the different things that have got him distracted.
I've got a notebook, but it doesn't have anything really written in it.
Because you were too distracted.
Because I was too distracted. No, look, I have got my 1490 Doom stuff, so you can still, I've got their files that came out from the Game Found. I've got the 2 of the 3 books they put out. There's one that's still being worked on a bit. So yeah, that's come out. I'm keen to get some games of that in, but I've got to build a table first.
Have we talked about 1490 Doom?
We did talk about it previously on the previous episode, where we talked about, again, me being distracted by it and go check it out. I caved and I bought it because I went, you know what, for
anyone who hasn't listened, it's a skirmish game set in 1490, and it's very twisted, corrupting fumes sort of drift higher up the board, and you've got to be fighting your way to. That's right. I make fun of it.
Yeah.
But it's very cool. That was an in-joke from a different game.
Yeah.
But very cool. It's like fighting for the high ground to stay above the poisonous schmog.
Yeah, it's just a D6 type of base game, so it's really quite cool. There's been a ton of people that have done battle reports for it. Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games has done some pretty good run-throughs for it. There's people that have made a few things out there as far as extra STLs, which I actually grabbed from Skullforge, which I've got to try and get printed.
Nice.
So I've got a lot of hope for that one, because with the game you actually only run with 3 miniatures on the table.
Really cool.
It's very small, very concise. You play on a 2 foot by 2 foot circular board. But the whole idea is that it's not designed around what you have on the ground. It's how vertical you can go through with your board. And if you have not had the chance yet to go look at it from my previous ramblings, go check out on Instagram, look up 1490 Doom. It's by Buer Games. You can buy the rulebooks and everything through their website, SELs for all their stuff, all the different miniatures. You can kit bash your own. It's really quite a miniatures agnostic game. But the stuff they brought out and some of the stuff by Skullforge looks absolutely fantastic for it.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Well worth checking out if you have the opportunity, guys. The boards that some people are doing are fantastic, fully sculpted. Some are modular, really cool.
And that's what I was about to say. Just the creativity that you can put into your boards. Verticality is not usually a thing that we actually look at when we're playing games.
Yeah.
You go up a couple of levels, great, all right, whatever.
it's a hill or a building you hide in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This game is all built around going up levels, like just the sheer creative license that you can take with a really, really cool board, starting from even like a sewer level, building your way up as you try and escape the smog into like a tower. Oh, fantastic.
Absolutely cool. And previously, the only other games that have had that kind of verticality are almost universally sci-fi themed.
Yeah.
This is the first time that fantasy has really hit that. Like Mordheim has a lot of verticality, but it's hard to traverse.
Yes.
And as the years have rolled by, we see more dynamic movement in other games.
Yeah.
Now, Mordheim is a bit clunky to get higher up, but this provides you with so many cool opportunities for like grappling lines and hooks and stuff,
Ladders
and like
and things like
running
that,
across like a fallen spar from one building to another, all that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, so that's really got me distracted a fair bit. So I made sure I got into that, and I'm going to be working on a few of those. Look, there's a lot of other stuff out there. We have discussed briefly Stargrave, which we're looking at doing some stuff for Star Wars themed games. So because we've all got a ton of Star Wars miniatures and a bunch of terrain, but we'll look at probably doing an episode of that in the future, talking about what we're choosing and how the games went if we manage to get some games in. So
I'm very distracted by that as well. Very excited because there's so much theme in like everybody's
make it how you want. That's the cool thing about it.
My entire team is basically a like customs and excise boarding unit from the Empire that go on board and seize people's cargo.
Yeah.
And that's why they're doing sort of piratical missions. But compared to Andrew and your ones are completely different styles and themes.
Yeah, I'm doing like a Saw Gerrera's partisan, so it's like more, dirty fighters,
Actual
like
pirates.
Actual pirate. Well, not actual pirates, because that would be like Hondo.
Political pirates.
Well, they're the rebels who are less rebel-y but more destructive. So the partisans are, if you've seen Rogue One, you see them in there, they die.
The spicy rebels.
Yeah, the spicy rebels. Yeah. So they were. I've had some 3D prints that I've got from over the years as gifts and things like that. So I decided to chuck on some bases and go from there. And what are you running?
Yeah, so continuing my usual Captain America theme, I'm doing like a Naboo Palace Guard kind of like diplomatic ship with some like Senate commandos mixed in as like some heavier troops. So kind of basically like a Republic diplomatic corps kind of thing.
Yeah.
With either like a Jedi as one of the like the spiritual kind of choices you can take.
Like mystic or something.
Yeah, like a mystic or something, or just like a regular old, like maybe a diplomat as a who they're guarding. But an excuse, as you said, just to get out some cool 3D prints that I've had kicking around. Stuff
that we haven't really been able to use in our games because they're not really designed. There's no real set rules for them that can work in most games. So, we've got that coming up, which is going to be interesting. So we'll have we'll dedicate some time to that. Let's see what else. Conflict 47 is definitely one that we'll revisit with a full episode as well.
Oh, yes, we will.
Because we've all kind of been very much enamored by that when it came out for Second Ed. Not that we got into playing it, but we've all got bits and pieces we can do it. One of our mates is very interested because he's actually got some zombies he wants to use. A few other guys are wanting to get in, just utilising their forces with some of their heavier tanks. We'll look at doing that. Yeah. And that's coming out very shortly, actually. So
these next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to get our hands on the book and have a good read of that and go from there. But one last
we could do an unboxing. Oh wait, for a podcast.
Yeah, we could always make the jump. So
it'd just be us rustling boxes in the background and going. Stay tuned. That's our new ASMR channel. Russell.
Yeah, just like really close to the mic. No, look, so we'll have some more on that. We won't go too much into what we're doing for that. But one thing last one I will go through and do because we do need to wrap up my ramble here is Trench Crusade. Again,
but Mitch, none of us are getting into Trench Crusade because we kept avoiding it.
I know,
and it's not on the list.
It's not. Well. No, it's not on the list, but let's face it, it is just still so damn cool. Everything that's coming out, the amount of different 3D sculptors out there.
Yeah.
Look, it's one of those things that's really quite fantastic. So, look, if you guys haven't, I know it's everywhere. Like, if you haven't seen Trench Crusade, go take a look. The miniatures are great. The official miniatures are great. A lot of the 3D print companies that people do up, they look fantastic. The rule set's quite nice. It is something you can follow. There's a bunch of different people that have done playthroughs out there on how to do it, lore videos. Check it all out. So because it is really good. And yeah, thanks to Tim, I now have an Infinity Force as well. So yeah, so I'll be looking at building some of those up and sharing those on the socials at some point going forward, which
Excellent.
I will be better at sharing stuff on social media. I am shocking at it. So
I think the part I love most about this section is just the sheer amount of niche, random hobby games that you seem to come across out of nowhere.
It's an illness.
It's your disease state.
It's my disease state.
Well, if it's your disease state too, then welcome to the family.
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed having us back. We've really enjoyed recording, and we're going to get back into it fairly regularly. So thank you one and all for lending us your ear holes for this last hour or so.
Forward to the next episode.
Yeah, we'll look at doing a post-Moab wrap-up of how we bombed, or how I bombed. I think Tim will probably win that game.
I'm going to artillery, but not bomb.
Yeah.
And Andrew's shopping basket from the buy swap sell.
Yeah. So thanks again, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.
See ya.
Bye-bye.